He could afford every expert in the world. He could control every corner of his home. But the one thing Adrian Falk couldn't buy was the sound of his son laughing again. Until a stranger with no credentials and a strange question walked through his door and changed everything. The first thing you need to understand about Adrian Falk is that he was a man who made his fortune by seeing things before they happened. Not in a mystical way. Nothing supernatural. Adrian didn't read tea leaves or consult the stars. He read data. Patterns. The invisible mathematics that governed how markets moved, how companies failed, how risks materialized out of thin air and destroyed everything you thought was solid. By the time he was 35, Adrian had built an empire on prediction. His tech firm specialized in risk assessment software, algorithms that could analyze thousands of variables and tell you, with unsettling accuracy, where the cracks would appear before the structure collapsed. Banks used his systems. Insurance companies. Governments. They paid millions for the ability to see around corners, to know what disaster was coming next. Adrian Falk had made himself rich by preparing for the worst. But here's the thing about preparing for the worst. It doesn't actually stop the worst from happening. It was a Tuesday morning in December 2018 when our story really begins, though the seeds of it were planted 3 years earlier. Adrian sat in his home office on the 3rd floor of his villa in Oslo, surrounded by screens that glowed like cold winter suns. 6 monitors curved around his custom desk, each one streaming a different feed: stock markets, news alerts, company analytics, security reports. Outside, Norway was locked in the grip of winter. The kind of winter that makes you forget the sun ever existed. Darkness came early and stayed late, and the cold wasn't just temperature, it was a presence, a weight, something that pressed against the windows and made everything feel smaller. Adrian's villa stood on a hillside overlooking the city, a masterpiece of modern architecture that had been featured in design magazines across Europe. All glass and steel and clean lines. Walls that seemed to disappear. Floors that reflected the sky. From the outside, it looked like a piece of art, something light and open and free. From the inside, it felt like a fortress. Every door had a keypad lock. Every window had sensors. There were cameras mounted in corners, hidden in light fixtures, embedded in smoke detectors. 16 of them in total, covering every room, every hallway, every angle. The security system was state-of-the-art, the kind that could distinguish between an intruder and a household pet, that could send alerts to Adrian's phone before someone even touched the front gate. He had installed them all himself. Well, not physically, he'd hired a team for that. But he designed the system, chosen the placements, configured the software. Every camera fed into a central server that archived footage for 90 days. Adrian could access any of them from his phone, his laptop, anywhere in the world. He rarely did. The cameras weren't for watching. They were for knowing. For the possibility of knowing if he ever needed to. They were insurance against the thing he feared most, being caught off guard again. Adrian took a sip of coffee, his 3rd cup of the morning, already gone cold, and scrolled through a report from his development team in Singapore. The numbers were good. Projected revenue up 18%. A new contract with a Dutch financial firm. Everything trending in the right direction. He felt nothing. Success had stopped meaning anything around the same time joy had. They'd both drained out of his life like water through a crack, slow enough that he didn't notice it happening until one day he woke up and realized he was empty. The intercom on his desk chirped. Mr. Falk. It was Astrid, the housekeeper. She came 3 times a week to clean, restock the kitchen, manage the mundane details of maintaining a house this size. The breakfast dishes are cleared. Is there anything else you need before I go? Adrian glanced at the time. 10:47 a.m. He'd been working for 4 hours already. No, thank you, Astrid. See you Thursday. Will do. And Mr. Falk. Her voice softened. Noah seemed cheerful this morning. He ate well. Something in Adrian's chest tightened. Good. That's good. Thank you. The intercom went silent.
Noah.
His son. 11 years old. The only thing in Adrian's life that still mattered, and the one thing he didn't know how to reach anymore. Adrian's eyes drifted to the bottom monitor, the one that showed the security camera grid. 16 small rectangles, each one a window into a different part of the house. He could see the empty kitchen, the vacant living room, the hallway with its polished floors. One of the rectangles showed Noah's bedroom on the first floor. The door was closed. Adrian didn't click to enlarge it. He never did anymore. Let me take you back. You need to understand how we got here. 3 years earlier. February 2015. Oslo was in the middle of one of those winters that felt like it would never end. The kind where ice builds up in layers, where the city's salt trucks run day and night, but the roads stay treacherous anyway. Adrian had been in London that week, closing a deal with a British investment firm. Big money. Career-defining stuff. He'd left Noah with Ingrid, his ex-wife. They'd been divorced for 2 years by then, and the arrangement was civil but cold. Shared custody, detailed schedules, lawyers who made sure everything was fair and nothing was warm. Noah was 8 years old. Bright kid. Quiet, thoughtful. The kind of child who asked questions that made adults uncomfortable because they revealed how little we actually understand about the world. He loved building things, Lego sets that sprawled across the living room floor, elaborate structures with moving parts and hidden compartments. Adrian used to sit with him in the evenings, helping sort the pieces, watching Noah's small hands fit the blocks together with absolute concentration. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, though that detail would come to feel like a sick joke, Ingrid was driving Noah to a birthday party. One of his classmates, a boy named Magnus who lived on the other side of the city. The roads were clear. Ingrid was a careful driver. She did everything right. But the man in the other car didn't. He'd been drinking since lunch. Vodka, mostly. Enough that he should have known better than to get behind the wheel, but people who drink like that rarely know better about anything. He ran a red light at an intersection near Frogner Park, going 60 kilometers an hour in a 30 zone. Ingrid saw him coming. She tried to swerve. But ice doesn't care about reflexes or good intentions. The impact crushed the passenger side of Ingrid's car like a tin can. Adrian was in a conference room in London when his phone rang. An unknown Oslo number. He almost didn't answer. He was in the middle of a presentation, PowerPoint slides glowing on the wall behind him, but something made him glance at the screen again. He stepped out of the room. Mr. Falk? This is Oslo University Hospital. There's been an accident. The rest of the conversation was a blur. Words like critical condition and spinal trauma and next of kin. Adrian heard himself asking questions, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He was already moving, grabbing his coat, running toward the elevator. He caught the next flight out. 3 hours that felt like 3 years. He tried calling Ingrid, no answer. He tried calling the hospital back. They told him nothing new, just that Noah was in surgery, that they were doing everything they could. I know. Why did this happen to me? I don't know. There's no good reason. It just had happened. Noah cried harder. Adrian held on, his own tears falling now, silent and steady. Mara sat at the table, giving them space, but her presence was still there, a witness, a guardian, someone who knew that some things had to be witnessed to be real. The crying went on for a long time. Eventually, Noah's sobs quieted to hiccups, then to shaky breaths. But Adrian didn't let go. He stayed there on his knees beside the wheelchair, one hand on Noah's back, just being there. Sorry, Noah finally mumbled, his voice hoarse. I got your shirt all gross. I don't care about the shirt. I'm such a mess. You're not a mess. You're feeling everything you've been holding in. That's not a mess. That's human. Noah pulled back slightly, wiping his face with his sleeve. His eyes were red and swollen, his face blotchy. I don't know how to do this, Dad. I don't know how to be okay with not being okay. Adrian sat back on his heels, looking up at his son. I don't think you have to be okay with it. I think you just have to keep going anyway. Keep living even when it's hard. Keep letting yourself feel things even when they hurt. That sounds exhausting. It is, Mara said, speaking for the first time in several minutes. Living is exhausting sometimes. But the alternative is worse. Noah looked at her. What's the alternative? Not living. Just existing. Just going through the motions until you forget what you're even motions through. Mara's voice was soft but firm. You've been doing that for a while, I think. Existing but not living. Noah absorbed this. How do I stop? You already have, Mara said. Just now. That crying, that anger, that's life. It's painful, but it's real. It's yours. So I just what? Keep being sad and angry all the time? No, Adrian said. You let yourself be sad and angry when you need to be. But you also let yourself be other things.
Happy.
Curious.
Silly.
Whatever you feel in the moment. What if I feel too many things? Then you feel too many things. Adrian smiled slightly. That's better than feeling nothing at all. Noah looked down at his hands, thinking. Then he said, I miss building things. Like really building, not just Legos. I used to think about being an engineer, designing buildings or bridges or something.
But now.
He gestured at his legs. I don't know if I can still do that. Why not? Mara asked. Because engineers have to go to construction sites and stuff. They have to walk around and… Some engineers sit at computers all day, Adrian interrupted. And the ones who do go to sites, accessibility is improving. Ramps, elevators, better equipment. It's not perfect, but it's possible. Really? Really? And even if some parts are harder for you, that doesn't mean you can't do it at all. It just means you might have to find different ways. Adrian paused, then added, you could probably design more accessible buildings than most engineers because you actually know what it's like to need that accessibility. Noah's expression shifted, not to hope exactly, but to something less closed off. A possibility where before there had only been walls. I hadn't thought of it that way, he said quietly. Well, start thinking of it that way. Adrian reached out and squeezed Noah's shoulder. Your legs don't work. That's true. But your brain does. Your hands do. Your imagination does. Those are the things you need for engineering. But Dad. No buts. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying you won't face challenges other kids don't have to deal with. But I am saying it's possible. If you want it, you can work toward it. Noah looked at him for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I'll think about it. Not like commit to it or anything, but I'll think about it. Adrian felt something warm spread through his chest. That's all I'm asking. They sat there as the sun continued its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The moment felt fragile, like if any of them moved too suddenly or said the wrong thing, it would shatter. But Mara, with her instinct for these things, knew exactly what to do. She started humming. That same song from before, the one about the river. Her voice was quiet, barely audible, but it filled the space with something soft and continuous. A reminder that life kept flowing, that the world kept moving even when everything inside you felt stuck. Noah closed his eyes, listening. Adrian stayed beside his wheelchair, one hand still resting on his son's arm, anchoring them both to this moment, to this fragile new beginning. And for the first time since the accident, Adrian didn't try to plan the next step. Didn't try to figure out how to optimize this moment or protect against the next crisis. He just sat there in the fading light, with his son and this quiet woman who taught them both how to be present, and let himself feel everything, the grief, the love, the tentative hope, all of it swirling together in a way that was messy and painful and impossibly beautiful. Later, after Noah had gone to bed, Adrian found Mara in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes.
Thank you, he said.
She looked up, surprised. For what? For this. For tonight. For, he struggled to articulate it. For teaching us how to be real with each other again. Mara dried her hands on a towel. I didn't teach you anything. I just gave you space to remember what you already knew. That's teaching, Adrian said. The best kind. She smiled. Noah is a good boy. He just needed permission to be sad. Children are very good at holding things in when they think they're protecting the adults around them. And adults are very good at hiding from things that scare them. Yes, Mara agreed. We're all just people, trying our best. Adrian leaned against the counter. Can I ask you something? Of course. That song you sing. The one about the river. What's it really about? Mara was quiet for a moment. My grandmother used to sing it when I was little. It's about endurance. About how the river keeps flowing even when everything around it changes. Cities rise and fall. Empires come and go. But the river just keeps moving toward the sea. She paused. When I was taking care of her after her stroke, I would sing it to her. And she couldn't speak anymore, but sometimes she would cry. And I realized the song wasn't just about the river. It was about her. About how she kept going even when her body betrayed her. About how the essential thing inside her, the part that made her who she was, kept flowing toward something, even if we couldn't see what. That's okay, Katrine said smoothly. We'll take it at his pace. She was good at her job. Technically speaking, she was excellent. She arrived on time every day, followed the care plan meticulously, documented everything in neat handwriting in a logbook she kept in the kitchen. She made sure Noah did his exercises, took his medications, ate balanced meals. But there was something missing. Some warmth, some spark of connection. Katrine treated Noah like a patient, not a person. She was kind, but it was the kind of kindness that came from professional obligation rather than genuine affection. Noah withdrew further into himself. Adrian watched it happen, watched his son become smaller and quieter, watched the light go out of his eyes week by week. But he didn't know what to do about it. Katrine was doing everything right according to the care plan. The problem wasn't her competence. The problem was that competence wasn't enough. One evening in late October, Adrian came home from work to find Noah sitting alone in the living room. It was dark, someone had forgotten to turn on the lights, and Noah was just sitting there in his wheelchair, staring at nothing. Where's Katrine? Adrian asked. She left, Noah said quietly. Her shift ended. Did you have dinner?
Yeah.
And your exercises? Yeah. Adrian stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand, looking at his son's silhouette against the window. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would bridge the distance between them. But he didn't know what that would even sound like anymore. Do you want me to turn on a light? I guess. Adrian flipped the switch. The room flooded with brightness that felt too harsh, too revealing. Noah blinked against it but didn't move. Want to watch something together? Adrian offered. There's that new Marvel movie you wanted to see. Noah shrugged. Sure. They watched the movie side by side on the couch. Noah in his chair pulled up beside it. Adrian perched on the edge of the cushions. Neither of them laughed at the funny parts. Neither of them commented on the action sequences. They just sat there in the flickering light until the credits rolled, and then Adrian helped Noah get ready for bed and retreated to his office. That night, for the first time, Adrian opened the security camera app on his laptop. He told himself he was just checking that Noah was comfortable, that everything was okay. But really, he was searching for something, some clue about what was going wrong, some evidence that would tell him how to fix this. The camera in Noah's room showed his son lying in bed, awake, staring at the ceiling. Adrian watched for 10 minutes. Noah didn't move, didn't read, didn't listen to music, didn't do anything except lie there in the dark. Adrian closed the laptop and pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw stars. 2 weeks later, Katrine gave notice. She was professional about it, apologetic even. Said she'd been offered a position at a hospital, better hours, better pay. Adrian knew it wasn't really about the money. It was about Noah's silence, the weight of it, the way it made every interaction feel like pulling teeth. He thanked her for her service and started looking for a replacement. The second caregiver was named Lars. 28 years old, energetic, the kind of young man who thought enthusiasm could solve anything. He had a degree in social work and a belief that all kids just needed someone to believe in them. Lars lasted 3 months. He tried hard. Adrian had to give him that. Lars showed up every day with ideas, activities, plans to engage Noah. Art projects, adaptive sports equipment, educational games. He talked constantly, filling the silence that Noah left behind. But Lars had a problem. He was careless. Not malicious. Not cruel. Just negligent in small ways that added up. He'd leave Noah's wheelchair brakes unlocked. Forget to check if the bathroom floor was dry before helping Noah transfer. One time, Adrian came home to find Noah sitting in his chair in the living room with no way to reach his water bottle. Lars had put it on the counter across the room and then disappeared upstairs to do laundry. Noah didn't complain. He never complained. But Adrian noticed. He started checking the camera feeds more often. Just quick glances during the workday, making sure Lars was paying attention, making sure Noah was safe. One afternoon in January 2016, Adrian pulled up the living room camera and saw Noah struggling to reach the television remote, which Lars had left on the coffee table just out of his grasp. Noah stretched as far as he could, his face tight with concentration, but he couldn't quite get it. He sat there for a full minute, trying, before finally giving up and slumping back in his chair. Adrian was in a meeting at the time. He watched it happen on his phone, feeling his jaw clench tighter and tighter. When the meeting ended, he drove straight home. Lars was in the laundry room, headphones in, folding towels. "Lars," Adrian said from the doorway. The young man jumped, yanking out his earbuds. "Mr. Falk, I didn't hear you come in." "Where's Noah?" "In the living room. He's fine, just watching TV." Adrian kept his voice level. When you help someone with limited mobility, you make sure everything they might need is within reach. Remote controls. Water.
Phones.
Do you understand? Lars blinked, confused. Yes, of course. Did something happen? Just remember that, Adrian said, and walked away before he said something he'd regret. But the incidents kept happening. Small things, thoughtless things. Lars would start Noah's physical therapy exercises and then get distracted by his phone. He'd prepare meals that Noah liked but forget to cut the food into manageable pieces. Once, Adrian came home to find Noah trying to navigate the hallway while Lars was outside chatting with a delivery driver, completely unaware that Noah needed help. In March, Adrian let him go. Lars seemed shocked. "I thought things were going well," he said. "They're not," Adrian replied simply, and handed him a severance check. The third caregiver was named Sonia. Adrian didn't like her from the interview, but she had stellar qualifications and came recommended by a prominent rehabilitation center. She was 52, former military nurse, no-nonsense demeanor. She promised structure, discipline, results. She lasted 6 weeks. And she was the worst of all. Sonia wasn't careless. She was hard. She saw Noah's silence as defiance, his withdrawal as laziness. She believed that what he needed was tougher standards, higher expectations, less coddling. "The boy needs to toughen up," she told Adrian during her first week. "If you let him feel sorry for himself, he'll never adapt." Adrian didn't like the phrasing, but part of him wondered if she was right. Maybe Noah did need to be pushed. Maybe Adrian had been too soft, too accommodating. He let Sonia implement her system. She created strict schedules, mandatory exercise times, rules about screen time and leisure activities. If Noah didn't complete his physical therapy to her satisfaction, she'd withhold privileges. No TV, no computer, no games. Noah's silence deepened. Adrian watched from a distance, telling himself this was what tough love looked like, that Noah would thank him later when he was stronger and more independent. But something felt wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April when Adrian broke his rule about watching the cameras. He was at the office, in back-to-back meetings all day. But during a brief break, something made him pull out his phone and check the living room feed.
Just a feeling.
An instinct. The timestamp said 2:47 p.m. Noah was in his wheelchair by the window, working on a physical therapy exercise, arm extensions with resistance bands. Sonia stood behind him, arms crossed, watching. Adrian turned up the volume. "Come on," Sonia's voice came through the speaker. 15 more. You're not even trying." Noah's arms shook. He'd clearly been at this for a while. "I am trying," he said quietly.
"No, you're not."
"You're giving up like you always do." Again. 15 more. Noah started again. His movements were slow, labored. By the 10th repetition, his arms were trembling so badly he could barely hold the bands. "Pathetic," Sonia muttered. Not loud, but audible. "No wonder you're in that chair." Adrian's blood went cold. Noah's hands dropped. The resistance bands fell to his lap. His head bowed. Adrian was already moving. He left his office mid-meeting, didn't explain, just grabbed his coat and ran to the elevator. The drive home took 20 minutes that felt like hours. When he burst through the front door, Sonia was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. Noah was still in the living room, motionless, the resistance bands on the floor beside him. "You're fired," Adrian said to Sonia. No preamble, no explanation. She turned, surprised. "Excuse me? Pack your things. I want you out in the next 10 minutes. Mr. Falk, if this is about the exercise session, I can explain." "I don't want an explanation. I want you gone." Sonia's jaw tightened. "I've been doing my job. If you're too soft to see what the boy needs."
Get out.
She must have seen something in his expression because she didn't argue further, just grabbed her bag and walked out without another word. When the door closed behind her, Adrian stood in the hallway, his heart hammering in his chest. He walked into the living room. Noah hadn't moved. His head was still down, his hands folded in his lap. "Noah," Adrian said gently. His son didn't look up. "I'm sorry. I didn't know she was. I should have." Adrian's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." Noah finally lifted his head. His eyes were dry, but there was something in them that made Adrian's chest ache. Not sadness. Resignation. As if this was just what the world was now, and there was no point in being surprised by it. "It's okay, Dad," Noah said quietly. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. That night, Adrian lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Sonia's words over and over in his mind. "No wonder you're in that chair." He'd let that woman into his home. He'd trusted her with his son. And she'd said that. To a child. To his child. Adrian got up, went to his office, and pulled up the camera system. He went back through the footage from the past 6 weeks, watching it at double speed, looking for other moments he'd missed. He found them. Sonia snapping at Noah for spilling water. Sonia rolling her eyes when Noah asked a question. Sonia handling Noah roughly during transfers, as if she was angry at having to help him. Adrian had installed the cameras to prevent exactly this kind of thing. But he'd been too afraid to look. Too uncomfortable watching his son struggle.
So he'd let it happen anyway.
He sat there in the dark, the monitors glowing around him, and made a decision. He would hire one more caregiver. But this time he would watch. He would pay attention. He wouldn't let anyone hurt Noah again. Not through cruelty, not through carelessness, not through indifference. He installed 3 more cameras the next day. 1 in the hallway, 1 in the therapy room, 1 in the kitchen. 19 cameras total now, covering every inch of the house. And then he started the search for someone new. Part 3. The woman with a strange question. The resume that caught Adrian's attention was, ironically, the least impressive of the bunch. He'd been reviewing applications for 2 weeks, reading through pages of credentials and certifications and glowing recommendations. Everyone looked perfect on paper, which, given his recent experiences, made him trust the paper even less. But one application was different. Mara Petrov. No middle name. 36 years old. Originally from Bulgaria, living in Norway for the past 8 years. Her qualifications were basic, a certificate in elder care from a community college in Oslo, a first aid certification, a couple of brief references from cleaning services and temporary care positions. Nothing impressive. What caught Adrian's eye was the cover letter. Most applicants wrote generic paragraphs about their passion for caregiving, their experience with special needs children, their commitment to making a difference. Professional boilerplate that could have been copied from a template. Mara's letter was 3 sentences. "I have experience caring for people who need help. I am patient and I pay attention. I would like to meet your son." That was it. No flourishes. No promises. Just simple, direct statements. Adrian almost deleted it. The woman had minimal qualifications and barely any relevant experience. But something about those 3 sentences stuck with him. The lack of pretense. The focus on Noah rather than her own credentials. On a whim, he sent her an email asking if she could come in for an interview. She replied 2 hours later. Yes. When Mara arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late April 2016, Adrian watched from the third-floor window as she walked up the driveway, a small woman, maybe 5'3", wearing a plain gray coat and carrying a worn canvas bag over one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple bun. She moved without hurry, her steps careful on the slightly damp pavement. Adrian went downstairs to let her in. When he opened the door, the first thing he noticed was her hands. They were rough, calloused, the hands of someone who'd spent years doing physical labor. She wore no jewelry, no nail polish. Everything about her was plain, unremarkable. "Mr. Falk," she said, her accent softening the consonants. "Thank you for seeing me." "Come in," Adrian said, stepping aside. She entered the house without comment, didn't gawk at the architecture or the expensive furnishings the way most visitors did. Just followed him to the living room and sat in the chair he indicated. Adrian settled across from her with his tablet, ready to go through his standard interview questions. But before he could start, Mara spoke. "Where is Noah?" "Upstairs in his room," Adrian said. "I thought we'd talk first, and then... Does he know I'm here?" Adrian hesitated.
No.
"I didn't want to. I mean, we've had several caregivers already, and I didn't want to get his hopes up if this wasn't going to work out." Mara nodded slowly, her expression neutral. Adrian cleared his throat and looked down at his tablet. "So, I've reviewed your application, but I have to be honest, your experience with children is limited. Most of your background is in elder care." "Yes," Mara said simply. "Noah's situation is specific. He's in a wheelchair due to a spinal cord injury. He needs help with mobility, physical therapy, daily care tasks. And there's also..." Adrian paused, trying to find the right words. "There's an emotional component.
He's been through a lot.
The previous caregivers haven't been able to connect with him." "I see." Adrian waited for her to elaborate, to sell herself, to explain why she'd be different. She didn't. "Can you tell me about your experience?" he prompted. "What made you apply for this position?" Mara folded her hands in her lap. "I worked in Sofia for 7 years, taking care of my grandmother after she had a stroke. She couldn't walk, couldn't speak well. I helped her with everything. Then I came to Norway and worked with an elderly man who had dementia. After he passed, I worked cleaning houses, some temporary care positions. Now I am looking for something more permanent." "That's quite different from working with a child." "People are people," Mara said quietly. "The body needs what it needs. But more than that, the person inside needs to be seen." Adrian blinked. "What do you mean?" "Many people see only the problem, the wheelchair, the injury. They try to fix it or manage it. But underneath is still a person, a child who wants to be a child." It was the most she'd said since arriving, and something in her tone made Adrian sit back in his chair. "The previous caregivers," Mara continued, "did they ask Noah what he wants?" "They followed care plans," Adrian said, slightly defensive. "Professional protocols." "That's not what I ask." Adrian felt something shift in the room. This woman with her plain clothes and unremarkable resume was somehow the one conducting the interview now. "What would you do differently?" he asked. Mara was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant, as if she was thinking carefully about how to answer. "I would listen," she finally said. "Not to give advice or make plans. Just listen. And I would be there. Not as a job, but as..." She searched for the word. "As a presence." "A presence," Adrian repeated.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't need someone to do things for them. They need someone to be with them while they figure out how to do things themselves." Adrian didn't know what to make of this. It sounded vague, almost mystical, nothing like the structured, evidence-based approaches the other caregivers had described. But something about it resonated. Maybe because all the structured, evidence-based approaches had failed. He looked down at his tablet, at the list of standard interview questions he'd prepared. They suddenly seemed inadequate. "Do you have experience with physical therapy?" he asked instead. "Basic knowledge. I can learn more if needed." "Can you manage a feeding tube, medications, mobility equipment?" "I can learn." "What about emergencies? Medical crises?" "I am certified in first aid. I stay calm. I ask for help when I don't know something." Adrian studied her. She wasn't selling herself, wasn't trying to impress him. She was just stating facts, plainly and without embellishment. "Why do you want this job?" he asked. Mara met his eyes. "Because I think I can help. And because I need work." Both things are true. The honesty was jarring. Most applicants would have focused only on the first part, would have dressed it up in noble language about vocations and callings. Mara acknowledged both the altruism and the practicality, giving neither more weight than it deserved. Adrian found himself almost smiling. Almost. "I should tell you," he said, "Noah has been through a difficult time. He's very quiet, withdrawn. He may not respond to you at all, especially at first. That's okay. It's been hard to reach him." "I understand." Adrian wanted to ask how she could possibly understand what she knew about a child's grief, about the weight of a life changed irrevocably in one moment. But something in her eyes stopped him. There was a depth there, a kind of knowing that didn't need to be explained. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the afternoon light was fading, the sky turning that particular shade of gray that Oslo wore like a second skin in winter. Then Mara asked the question that would change everything. "Does Noah like sound?" Adrian frowned.
What?
"Sound," she repeated. "Music, voices, rhythm."
Does he respond to it?
I don't know. We don't really." Adrian trailed off, realizing he didn't actually know the answer. When had he last played music in the house? When had he last sung, hummed, made any sound that wasn't functional? "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Mara said, but there was something in her tone that suggested it was more than curiosity. Adrian didn't know what to make of the question. It seemed random, disconnected from everything else they'd discussed. But he filed it away in his mind, another puzzle piece that didn't quite fit yet. He asked a few more questions about her availability, her expectations for the position, her references. She answered them all with the same straightforward simplicity. No exaggeration, no false modesty. Just clear, honest responses. By the time the interview ended, Adrian still wasn't sure about her. She had none of the credentials he'd thought he wanted, none of the professional polish. But she had something else. Something he couldn't quite name. "I'll need to check your references," he said as they stood up. "And I'd like you to meet Noah, if that's all right." "Just briefly." "Of course." Adrian led her upstairs to Noah's room. He knocked gently on the door. "Noah, can we come in?" There was a pause, then a quiet, "Okay." Adrian opened the door. Noah was at his desk, his wheelchair pulled up to it, looking at something on a tablet. He glanced up when they entered, his expression guarded. "Noah, this is Mara. She might be coming to help us for a while. I wanted you two to meet." Noah's eyes flicked to Mara, then back to his tablet. "Hi," he said, barely audible. Mara didn't move toward him, didn't try to shake his hand or get closer. She just stood in the doorway and looked at him, really looked, with a kind of attention that wasn't intrusive but wasn't distant either. "Hello, Noah," she said. "It's nice to meet you." Noah didn't respond. The silence stretched. Adrian was about to intervene, to make an excuse and usher Mara out, when she spoke again. "What are you looking at?" Noah hesitated. "Nothing." "Can I see?" Another hesitation. Then, almost reluctantly, Noah turned the tablet so she could see the screen. It was a video about building bridges, something educational and dry, the kind of thing Noah watched for hours without comment. Mara watched for a moment. "Suspension bridges," she said. "They look like they shouldn't work. Too delicate. But they're strong because of attention. The pulling makes them stable." Noah looked up at her, really looked for the first time. Mara smiled, just a small curve of her mouth, nothing exaggerated. "Thank you for showing me.